Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Mets Daily on the Fan Arts Network. John Saponaro here with you today and every day to talk about our New York Mets. Before we get started, a quick shout out goes to our friends over at Kalshi for sponsoring the video for a limited time. Use the code FANARTSBaseball on the Kalshi app to get $10 when you trade 10. Two things really quick I should mention. One, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, now is the perfect time to do so. So go ahead and click that subscribe button to make sure that you are staying up to date with all things Mets Daily, which means all things New York Mets. Second thing, don't attempt to adjust your screens or your settings or whatever the case may be. I know we usually don't do shows on a Saturday, but I was unable to do a show for Friday. I had a lot of things going on, busy schedule, and got caught up. So I wanted to make sure I dropped a final episode of the week, because there's a lot of things to talk about. So there'll be no show tomorrow on Sunday as scheduled, and then we'll be back to business on Monday, carrying you through Monday through Friday as per usual. All of that out of the way, like I said, a lot of things to discuss, and we're not even going to talk about the game that was last night, because there's a lot of other things that I think are really just interesting and pertinent to the Mets world, to the Mets landscape. And finally, when we get to that last segment, Major League Baseball at large. Really the last two segments, I suppose, for Major League Baseball at large. Anyway, that being said, I want to start with Bo Bichette. There was a report that came out yesterday that Bo Bichette is not likely to opt out of his deal with the New York Mets. Now, some of you are going to be upset about that. Some of you are going to say that he, sucks, that you don't want him here, that he's not worth the money, blah, 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 blah. But for those of you who don't have that inherent bias built in, you know how I feel. I've talked about it on this show before. I think Bo Bichette is a very productive baseball player. I also think Bo Bichette deserves a ton of credit for how he handled the adversity to start the season, but more importantly, how he's played third base, which has been at a damn near excellent level. So when you look at where the Mets are trying to get to in 2027, and you look at this, what we talked about 2 days ago on this show, this core, this nucleus, and the fact that there are real building blocks here, Bo Bichette helps them get closer to that goal. He does not take them further from it. As far as being worth the money is concerned, look, I'll say this till I'm blue in the face. It's not your money. There is no salary cap as it stands right now in Major League Baseball. I don't think there ever will be one, but whatever. We can talk about that maybe in the final segment. And certainly more in the offseason as the CBA comes to an end on December 1st. But it's not your money. It doesn't matter how much money the Mets spend. And at this point, your only concern as a baseball fan should be winning baseball games. And does player X get you closer to winning versus player Y? Or does he get you closer to winning? Does player X get you closer to winning than not? That's really the biggest concerns that we should have. Now, yes, we all like to muse and play GM and talk about team building and talk about allocation of resources. The only resources you have in Major League Baseball are money, prospects, and players. I get all of that. But again, Steve Cohen's the richest owner in the sport. The Mets decided to give Bo Bichette this dollar amount. Bo Bichette accepted to play under this dollar amount. Bo Bichette has the ability to opt in or opt out. None of that stuff, once it's decided, once the contract is signed, really has anything to do with you as a fan. And I think Bo Bichette is going to be... Now look, I said when you looked up at the end of the year, I said this months ago, maybe in my first week of shows here with Mets Daily, I said when you look up at the end of the year, Bo Bichette's numbers will be fairly representative because he's been on a really good pace. Now look, some of the counting stats are going to be a bit down, and that is what it is. But when we get to the end of the season, Bo Bichette will not have had a poor season. And so I think with a year of comfortability under his belt, I think trying to avoid the uncertainty of the lockout, and I know if Bo Bichette opts to go back into free agency, he's one of, if not the best offensive players available in what is a weak free agent market. But he is coming off of what will be a down year for him. And then he has to, like I've mentioned on the show before, reset things. He has to go to, if he opts out, he's not going back to the Mets, obviously. If he opts out, he's not going back to Toronto, the only two places he's ever called home. So now he's going into a new situation, in a new city, potentially in a new league again, in a new environment, with a new contract to prove it again. Sometimes guys just like a little bit of routine. Baseball players, professional athletes, they're creatures of habit. They want a little bit of normalcy. And so maybe he doesn't want to go back into all of that. And I think that if he doesn't, it will behoove him. I think after a slow couple of months, month and a half, whatever, he has really rebounded to show you what he is capable of doing offensively. Now, when the team needed him most, when Soto was out and the team was desperate for help, he did not pick up the slack. Maybe that's not fair. Maybe it is unfair. Maybe it is what it is. Whatever, that's true. But also, as the season went on and as he got better, then they were playing without Lindor, and he had to slide over to shortstop. And then instead of having two guys in Lindor and Soto who were on base in front of him all the time, he didn't really have that. So, there's a lot of factors here as to why his season was down. Some of it is on him, some of it isn't. There's some unlucky batted ball data too. There's also some really bad at bats mixed in there. I'm not going to apologize for him. I'm not going to say you should feel bad for him. He's getting paid over $40 million to play baseball. What I'm saying is he's a good player. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater because you didn't like the fact that he had a bad 2 months or 6 weeks. And the proof is in the pudding. And I want to shout out my buddy Carson from a show called Mets Weekly because he threw this on Twitter yesterday. And he is spot on. You can follow him at MWCarse, C-A-R-S-E, and you should. He's a really good follow. He's brash. If you know Carson, you know he's brash, got a lot of bravado in the way he handles baseball discourse. However, he knows his stuff. And this is the stat line that he put up. Francisco Lindor in 2021, his first season with the New York Mets. In April and May, he had a slash line of 194, 294, 294. So a 194 batting average, a 294 on base with a 294 slug with a 68 weighted runs created plus. 68 weighted runs created plus means that he was well below league average. Weighted runs created plus measures your offense on a average of 100. So if you're at 68, you're well below league average. But then from June on, he had a slash line of 252, 340, 482 with a 122 weighted runs created plus. Now that's a lot of numbers, right? I'm trying to say them slow because you don't have them in front of you and I do. And I don't want to throw numbers at you. I'm not a stats podcast because it's visual and it's audio and it's hard for you to kind of nail it down. But you see the comparison that I'm talking about. Now, since that point, obviously Lindor has been even better. But you just look at the adjustment period through the first 6 weeks, 2 months, and where he's at now. Then you go to 2025 and you look at Juan Soto. In April and May, his slash line, 231, 357, 413 with a 119 weighted runs created plus. Now, that's not terrible. The batting average is down, but the on-base percentage looks good. Slugs a bit down. Weighted runs created plus still well above average, almost 20 points above average. We're talking about Juan Soto here. Generational player. Then from June on, he was objectively Juan Soto. He was at 282, 417, 588 with a 177 weighted runs created plus. That is astronomical. That is generational. That is Juan Soto. So after a 2-month adjustment period, you look up and you're like, oh, there he is. You look up at Lindor and you say, oh, there he is. That brings us to the man of the hour, as it were, Bo Bichette. 2026, April and May. You know where I'm going with this. Slash line, 219, 275, 308 with a 65 WRC plus. Terrible. But then from June to just yesterday, obviously, we don't have the rest of the season. There's about 30 games left, but you see my point. June to yesterday. Slash line, 308, 348, 459 with a 124 weighted runs created plus. These guys need a time to adjust. You might not like it. You might be impatient. You might not care. All of that is your prerogative. But you can't argue with the facts. And like Carson says very succinctly in the final 2 sentences of his tweet, $100 million plus from the Mets, and you suck for 2 months. This happens every time. And he's right. You can't argue with the fact that he is right. So if these reports are true, and obviously nothing is written in stone, Bo Bichette can still change his mind. This report can be inaccurate. Bo Bichette could go on an absolute tear over the last 30 games, and that could sway him to opt out. I don't know. I have long said that I think he is going to be here, and I have long said that I hope he is here. And the last part that I will add to this bit is that for players, it's about earning potential. For players, when they hit free agency, it's about maximizing dollar value. And this is why I always thought that Bo Bichette would be here for at least the first 2 seasons of this deal, if not all 3. Because you look at what happened with Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso rejects that extension from the Mets a couple years ago. Then he went on to sign what was a big dollar 1-year deal, basically, with the Mets a couple years later. And then he signs this big money deal for $30 million a year for 5 years with the Baltimore Orioles. And if you look at that effective 1-year deal with the Mets, plus the deal he signed with the Orioles, and the span of time, he has made more money than he would have made if he signed that initial extension with the New York Mets. So from a maximizing your earning potential, that is a better move. With Bo Bichette, he's a bit younger than Alonso. He signed this deal with the Mets 26 going on 27, which means if he sees this through, he can hit free agency again right at 30. The odds of him getting a 5-year contract at that point, not insane, especially if he plays well over the next year or 2. And so if he gets a 5-year contract even at that point, let's say 5 years adjusted for inflation of contracts going up, if he's at 5 years, 30 million, let's just say, whatever, 5 years, 30 million. That's 150 million. It's the exact Pete Alonso contract. Well, he was going to sign for a little over 200 over 7 years with the Phillies before the Mets swooped in. So if he makes just 150 mil on his next deal, after getting $126 million with the Mets over 3 years, he's already blown that Philadelphia deal out of the water. I think it was like 7 for 210. You're talking about 275, 276. So he doesn't have to do a lot to maximize his earning potential. And that's why I always thought he'd be here for at least 2 years. And I think there's an outside chance that he's here for all 3 years. Now, if he absolutely goes off next season, sure, maybe then you opt out. But again, it's all about maximizing that earning potential. That's what players are trying to do when they hit free agency. Which brings us to a guy who might be a free agent because the Mets decide to cut him soon. I don't know. The guy has more chances and gets more opportunities than anybody else, and that is one Mark Vientos, who has begun a rehab assignment in Double-A Binghamton, and that means that he is on the way back, much to the chagrin of most Mets fans, much to the chagrin of myself. Mark Vientos is not my favorite. I think that's very clear. Mark Vientos I don't think is great for the vibes, but I do think that Mark Vientos' time on the Mets is winding down. Unfortunately, I do think we're going to see Mark Vientos here before the season is over, because he started this rehab assignment, and when he is done and he is ready to come back, he will be given his final opportunity with the New York Mets. I don't think they're going to cut him before the year is over, especially if the team is not going to make the playoffs, which I don't think they will. But if they go on some miraculous run and without Vientos, sure, you can keep him down on rehab for 30 days and max out that rehab assignment, and then make your decision at the very end of the season, and then you can decide to leave him off of playoff rosters and all this stuff. But I don't think that's going to come to fruition. And so with the Mets where they are right now, I don't believe that we have seen the last of Mark Vientos, because I think he will be back at some point here in 2026. But then after that, I don't think Mark Vientos is long for the New York Mets roster. I could be wrong, but I hope I'm not, because I think it's time to turn the page on some of these guys. And as much as I'd like to also turn the page on Brett Baty, again, as we've talked about so much on this show, Brett Baty cannot be a starting player for you. He cannot be relied upon. And I think the Mets kind of know that now. And I take Brett Beatty's ability to play other positions and be a true utility man to task, because I don't think he's really that good. He's a plus, slightly above average third baseman. I think he's an okay second baseman. He's been a bad first baseman. He's been a bad outfielder. But his willingness to go out and do that stuff, his willingness to do whatever the Mets ask of him, his willingness to kind of set ego aside and things like that are going to probably put him in the plans for the Mets in a bench spot in 2027. Whereas, again, Vientos doesn't offer you any of that. There's no defensive value. There's no defensive versatility as a result. If he doesn't hit, he's not going to be good. He's not going to offer you any value. If he doesn't hit for power, he can't offer you any value. And we've been down this road with him before, so I don't need to rehash all of that stuff. But I think it is time to turn the page. But unfortunately, I think we're going to have to wait just a little bit longer before the Mets decide to do that. Now, baseball season is here, and you can trade every game on Kalshi. And you know what I do before I sit down to record this video. I head on over to the Kalshi app and I see if you could find some interesting, some good value, some fun stuff, usually related to our New York Mets. And for this one, I wanted to tie it into the next segment that we're going to have here in a second. And that is Nolan McLean to win the National League Rookie of the Year. If you go on Kalshi, the odds are not good. They're almost non-existent. J.J. Weatherholt is still the favorite. Sal Stewart is in second. Carson Benj in a distant third. And then Nolan McLean in fourth place. Now, make no mistake, those are the four best rookies in the National League. But if you've got a little bit of pizza money, I think there is an outside chance that you can have a little fun with Nolan McLean. Trading at 4%, 5 cents a share, meaning $100 will get you $1,520. The odds are long, but again, if you've got a little bit of pizza money, we'll talk about why that might make sense coming up in the next segment. But in the meantime, on Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there is no house, and as the probability changes, you can buy into and out of your position. You already know, but for a limited time, use the code FANARCHBASEBALL on the Kalshi app to get $10 when you trade 10. Kalshi, trade on anything, must be 18 and over. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risks and may not be suitable for all investors. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory. Now, I thought that was the perfect transition, the perfect way to transition into this next topic, which is, can Nolan McLean win Rookie of the Year? Now, can he? Yes. Will he? I'm unsure. I really am. Because there's a couple of things going against him while there are a couple of things really playing in his favor. First, let me mention, like I said during the Kalshi spot, J.J. Weatherholt, Sal Stewart, Carson Benj, and Nolan McLean are no doubt the top four rookies in the National League. It's been a really good year for rookies in the AL, in the NL, whatever. They are the top four guys for sure. But where they finish is going to be a bit fascinating. Because J.J. Weatherholt is still the favorite, and I don't think that he should be. Now, I don't think Carson Benj or Nolan McLean right now should be the favorite either. I think Sal Stewart should be the favorite. The reason why I say that is J.J. Weatherholt came on like crazy to start the season. And his offense was really good. His defense was exemplary. And as a result, he's going to put up a massive WAR season as a rookie, which is going to excite a lot of fans. It's going to excite a lot of voters. He's going to have probably a 5.5 WAR, whatever. It's going to be really good. But remember, WAR, you have to take it with a grain of salt because it does overrate defense, and it does overrate defense at non-premier positions, which is what J.J. Weatherholt does. He plays second base. Now, over the last several months, his offensive stats have dipped almost month over month. But his defense is keeping his WAR at a very high level, and so it is keeping him in the mix. I don't think, if you look at his season in totality, he is the Rookie of the Year. As a matter of fact, I don't think he should win it. I don't think he should be the favorite. I think of the four guys, he should finish fourth. Right now, Sal Stewart, to me, is the favorite. And it's not because I lean towards the counting stats above analytics. I think both are very important. I think a 5.5 WAR or whatever Weatherholt puts up is impressive for a rookie. But what I also think is impressive is a guy like Sal Stewart pushed in the middle of a lineup in the Cincinnati Reds who's probably going to hit 35 home runs and knock in 110, 120. I don't know. His OPS is going to be through the roof. His slug is going to be high. To me, that's more impressive to do as a rookie adjusting to the major leagues. Now, his WAR is not going to be the same. It's going to be much lower because he's not a plus defensive player, blah, 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 blah. But to me right now, if I had a vote, that's where my vote would go. I think, as we've talked about on this show before, Carson Benj has the best chance of the two Mets rookies to close the gap because Carson Benj is already similar to Weatherholt, or rather the opposite of Weatherholt, who's been going down month over month. Benj has been going up month over month in offensive categories. So much so that he's basically tied him or passed him in every single offensive category of merit. And if he continues on this trajectory and Weatherholt continues on his, well, Benj is going to have a better offensive season. Now, he probably can't catch him in WAR, but it doesn't matter because he's going to put up a very representative WAR season for a rookie, especially when you start to think about, well, he's now settled into right field. He was playing some left. He was playing some right. He was playing some center. He was moving around. Now he's become a guy who's a fixture in one spot. And since he's done that, he's become electric. He also has a chance to go 20-20 as a rookie, which if you like counting stats, that's nothing to sneeze at either. And then I think, and I said this on Twitter, when you start to do things that are massive, that get national attention, that's going to help your case. Because I think what's hurting Benj and McClain to a slightly lesser degree is that the Mets have been bad and people have ignored them. The national media, the voters, nobody cares. But now the Mets are doing something that nobody expected. The Mets are going on a little bit of a run. And with that little bit of a run comes more attention. Look at the Mets. Look at the Mets doing this with nobodies. Look at the Mets selling off pieces. And then when people start to pay attention, because now the Mets are winning games, then they see what Carson Benj is doing. They watch him throw out two runners on back-to-back plays. They watch the great catches. It's getting tweeted by the MLB account now. And all of a sudden, the Mets are less of a joke. Carson Benj starts to get to the forefront of voters' minds. And when you look at the stats and you look at where Benj is and where Benj could finish, you can make the case. Now, with McClain, the man of the hour, or the man of this segment, it's a little trickier. It's a little trickier for a couple of reasons. Ryan Finkelstein said this, and it's true. It's harder for pitchers to win Rookie of the Year. The Rookie of the Year voting just favors position players, everyday players. To be a pitcher, you have to be electric and unbelievable and undeniable, or there has to be a weak class for rookies. As I mentioned before, this is not a weak class for rookies. But what Nolan McClain is doing has been really nothing short of great. Because he is going to finish somewhere around, 180 innings. He's going to finish with over 200 strikeouts, and he's going to finish with an ERA in the mid-threes, and if he goes on a run here in his last whatever he's got, 7 starts, he can get that ERA all the way down to the low threes. And some of you are going to go low threes ERA, whatever. Look, a low threes ERA from a rookie with 200 strikeouts and somebody who's going to finish in the top 5, top 6, top 7, somewhere in that range of innings pitched for starters in the entire league, that's something. And what might happen, we often talk about splitting the vote. And oftentimes you'll say, well, two guys on one team, they split the vote. Benj gets some, McClain gets some. It's going to allow somebody else to win this award. What I think maybe could happen, is a little bit of reverse bias for the pitcher, which is you're going to get J.J. Weatherholt, who's a WAR darling, get some votes. You're going to get Sal Stewart, who is a counting stats darling, get votes. And maybe you get Carson Benj, who has a bit of both. He's going to be right there in the middle, maybe the most complete player, the most well-rounded player of the three. And he's going to get some votes. And maybe that allows McClain to kind of sneak in. Maybe there's people who favor what the pitcher is doing. Because much like Carson Benj is likely to be the best all-around offensive player between the three guys. Or the best all-around player between the three guys, Weatherholt himself and Sal Stewart. There's a good chance that Nolan McLean has the best upside of all four guys. Now, I'm not a voter. I've never been a voter. I don't have the vote. I don't know if that's going to play a factor for some of these guys who do have votes. But it's an interesting conversation. And the Mets, to their credit, are making it more interesting all the time with the way they're playing and with the way Benj and McLean individually are playing. And they've got about a month left to see if they can make some noise. This last topic, I just wanted to take a moment to shout out, and we've shouted out some other shows here today, so hopefully you're still rocking with us, of course, but I'm a big believer in giving people their flowers. And I have been so adamant that I am anti-owner, I am anti-salary cap, I am anti-billionaire over what is the worker class in every situation. I'm anti the ownership class over the worker class. I'm very pro-union. I have always been, as it relates to this topic for sure. But I saw something today from Bobby Wagner, who's one of the hosts of Tipping Pitches. He did a 12-minute video for More Perfect Union about what's really going on behind the scenes of this looming lockout. And it's very, very, very interesting. I'm not going to try to paraphrase it here. I encourage you, if you're a Mets fan, if you're a baseball fan, which if you're here, you are, go watch it. Go look up Bobby Wagner. Go look up Tipping Pitches. They've retweeted it. You can find it. It is so scathing an indictment on this propaganda machine about small market teams and what they can and can't do and why they're calling for a salary cap and why they have been for decades and why the business of baseball has changed and it's only changing more in their favor. Again, that's as much as I'll give to you about the video. Go watch it. You should. But I'll add this to the discourse. First of all, as it says at the bottom, the owners don't care about you. A lot of fans have begun, and this is strange because it's big market fans, it's small market fans, it's everything in between. The owners are trying to get you on their side, and it's kind of working. The owners don't care about you. I cannot say that enough. The owners of Major League Baseball teams do not care about you. If they get everything they want or nothing they want in this collective bargaining negotiations that's going to happen over the winter, that's probably going to be very messy. Whether we miss baseball games or not, whatever happens, they don't care about you today. They don't care about you tomorrow. They will not care about you once it's resolved, even if they get everything they want. If they get nothing that they want, they still won't care about you. It's not about you. Your experience at the ballpark is not going to get better. Your experience at the ballpark is not going to get cheaper. They are not going to pass the savings on to you after they get a salary cap. It is going to be exactly the same for you. And it's not just you, the Mets fan, with Steve Cohen as the owner. It's going to be exactly the same for you, the Pittsburgh Pirates fan, with Bob Nutting as the owner, the whatever they're from, whatever place they call home right now, Athletics, with John Fisher as the owner. It is going to be the same no matter what. Because their goal in all of this, the owners, is to suppress wages. Their goal is to put more money in their pockets. It is not to make baseball more competitive, more enjoyable, or more hopeful, as they've been putting out on their think pieces on Major League Baseball's website. It is not for you. Period. Now, some of you are going to say, well, John, the players don't care about me either. It's probably true. Most players probably don't care about you, the fan, either. But I tweeted this out, and I will ask it here again. And obviously, since we can't interact one-for-one, this is somewhat rhetorical, at least at this point while I record. But you can put your comments down on the video. I'm sure that you will. Of these three groups of people, who cares, truly cares, objectively cares, definitively cares about the sport of baseball? Fans, players, owners. The fans care. Of course you care. You're here. You're watching this. You're watching me. You're subscribed to the channel. You tune into the Mets games on SNY every night. You watch your team. If you're a fan of a different team, you're here, whatever. Sure. Yes. Absolutely. You care. The players, though. For the ones who said, John, the players don't care about us fans either. Sure. But the players care about baseball. They absolutely do. For some of them, it's probably the thing they care about the most. Maybe, if they're a little bit older and they're married and they have kids, maybe it's taking a hit behind their family. It's fallen in line as far as priorities are concerned. But this is the thing they've worked their entire lives to do. Colin McHugh, former Mets prospect, and then went on to win a World Series with the Astros, I believe. Colin McHugh is in the video that Bobby Wagner did. And, he says, this is the thing most baseball players have wanted to do from the first moment they've touched a baseball. They care about the sport. They care about the health of it. They don't want to lose games. They want to play baseball. For some of them, it's the only thing they've ever wanted. For some of them, it's the only thing they were ever not only good at, but exceptional at. It was the thing that called to them. They wanted it and it wanted them. And they worked for it. And it doesn't matter if you're an international signee out of the Dominican who gets signed when you're 15, 16 years old, and you come to the U.S. to play this game. It doesn't matter if you're Bryce Harper and you've been on the cover of Sports Illustrated as a 16-year-old because you're the best player in the world. It doesn't matter. These guys worked their entire lives for this. So you, the fan, you're dyed in the wool. You're watching Mets Daily every single damn day, and I appreciate you being here doing that. You care. I'd never tell you you didn't. But those players, they care. They really care about the game of baseball and the health of baseball and the health of the sport and the health of the league. And I got news for you. The owners, most of them, don't care about baseball. Rich people, massively rich people, billionaires, they're good at one thing: making more money. And that's usually because that's the only thing they care about, is making more money. Some of them care about the things that they've invested in differently. That's true. I think George Steinbrenner fully cared about making the Yankees a winner. He said as much. But also, it wasn't just what he said, his actions matched it. I think Steve Cohen, while the Mets have fallen short of being a winner, there is no doubt that Steve Cohen cares about making the Mets a winner. He has spared no expense. Does he care about his casino project and the Willets Point development too? Of course he does. He's a billionaire. He wants to make money. People want to own casinos. They want to just rake in the dough. Absolutely. Is that the only thing he cares about? I think that's fundamentally untrue. I think he cares to try to make the Mets a winner earnestly. You don't spend the amount of money to buy this team. You don't spend the amount of money to put players on the field and to build, rebuild complexes in Port St. Lucie and build schools in the Dominican and all the stuff that he's doing. You don't do that, or academies, not schools, you know what I mean? You don't do all of that unless you care about the growth of the team and the success of the team. So some owners do care about their team. They care about the competition. But I don't think any of them really care about the sport. I think Steve Cohen cares about winning because Steve Cohen's really never lost at anything. And he's super competitive. And he wants to win because he wants to win. But I don't think he cares about the health of Major League Baseball. I think whatever the rules wind up being in the next CBA, Steve Cohen's going to execute within them, and he's going to try his best to spend as much money and do whatever he can to win. I think that's going to be true. But I don't think he cares about what happens to baseball. Baseball players care about what happens to baseball. And baseball fans care about what happens to baseball. And this has been a long episode, but the last thing I'll leave you with this. On the side, it says lockout versus strike. And that wasn't just a catchy headline. And I didn't put it there because I wanted to write something that looks like a court case and try to make it dramatic. I put it there because what things are matter. Words matter. How things are classified matters. And I don't like this because it's being talked about as if a lockout and a strike are interchangeable. They're not. They're two definitively different things. A strike is when the workforce, the players, decide to stop. A lockout is when the owners, the bosses, decide to stop. So if we get a work stoppage, which is the universal term, the overarching term, if we get a work stoppage because of a lockout, that's not greedy players like some of you are going to say. A lockout definitionally is the owners, the bosses deciding, nope, we're stopping. Remember that. Remember that distinction when they continue their propaganda assault, telling you how much this is on the players and how much it's about fairness and how much they care about you, the fan. We just want it to be level playing field. We just care so much. You care so much. Why are you stopping the games from happening? Think about that. Think about it this weekend. Think about it next week. Think about it over the next couple months as we get to the end of the baseball season and we get closer and closer to the expiration date of the current CBA and what will be an inevitable lockout by the owners. Don't worry, I'll be sure to remind you along the way. That's going to do it for this episode of Mets Daily. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Sitting at just over 4,000 subscribers, trying to get to 5,000 by the end of the baseball season. Until next time, I'm John Saponaro. See you Monday.